Okay, we'll go ahead and start our next lecture, which is how much of my thinking happens without me knowing it. And truly, much of what we think, notice, remember, and judge does happen automatically before we're even aware of it. Because here's a question for you. How many decisions did your brain make today without asking your permission? It's a very loaded question, actually. Anyways, okay. Last week we did learn people construct reality differently. We interpret reality differently than others. Thus, what is reality in and of itself? So today we're going to ask something that maybe it's stranger, but how many thoughts today have actually been conscious? Or decisions? How many of the decisions that you've made today actually been conscious? Did you consciously decide today that English was what you were going to speak if that's your first language? Did you decide the color blue looked blue today? Did you consciously decide how to recognize your best friend or your teacher? Probably not. Those things were probably automatic and you didn't even think about it. Our brains constantly process enormous amounts of information automatically without us knowing them. And those are things that your brain did today. And another example, driving home from work and suddenly realizing you don't remember the last 5 minutes of your drive. Again, you did it. And there was some consciousness to a certain degree, but there were things that were unconsciously done as well. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and get started here. All right, first thing we need to do is talk about Kahneman, and I should give Tversky credit here too. In 2011, they came up with the concepts of System 1 and System 2 thinking. Now, this is also based on, or the work they did was also put in a book called Thinking Fast, and Slow. So you're welcome to read that if you like as well. But this goes into automatic and controlled thinking. And so system one is going to be your automatic thinking. Okay. This is going to be where we spend most of our time. It is going to be fast, effortless, unconscious, but also error prone, as the GIF shows. On the other hand, we have controlled thinking. This is system two. We don't spend much time in this because it's slow, effortful, conscious, and logical. Now, you can tell the difference between when you are experiencing system one and system two thinking. When you're experiencing system two thinking, it feels hard. It's like when you're trying really hard on a calculus problem. You can feel the effort and the tension it requires. It requires focus. It requires mental effort. You can literally physiologically experience it. Whereas automatic one is just basically the experience of moving through the day. Okay, just to go a little bit further, system one, the automatic part, it's our fast, emotional, unconscious thinking mode. It doesn't require a lot of effort. And again, once you learn how to do things like driving is something that requires automatic, or that is system one. Talking, cleaning, most of the things that we do throughout the day require system one thinking. And again, without self-awareness, without thinking about it, okay, what you see is all there is. And approximately 80% of our time is spent in system one. What it also does, it allows us to reach a judgment quickly, effortlessly, based on little information or contradictory information. This is where our brain automatically fills in the gaps and we roll with it. This ability did develop during evolution and contributed to the survival of our species, especially at the beginning of human development. So, as an example of this, if there was like a rustling in the bush, and again, if history indicated to us that, like, oh, rustling in the bush equals possibly a predator, system one thinking is going to be like, oh my God, rustling in the bush equals predator. I'm not going to go check on it or investigate. It's automatically a predator. So I'm going to run. That is system one thinking. Also, It's also very important because it protects system two to prevent cognitive overload. It lightens the load on that system two or deliberate system in a couple of different ways. It takes care of the most familiar tasks like driving, washing the dishes, vacuuming, walking through the house, eating, by turning them into basically autopilot routines or habits. But it rapidly sifts through information and ideas without us noticing it by it prioritizes whatever it thinks is relevant and filters out the rest by taking shortcuts. And that's when we can get into trouble with cognitive biases. Now, system two, slow, logical, like we were talking about 2% of our time is going to be spent in this system. Now, system two is going to look for that newer missing information to fill in the gaps to make decisions. Again, when we're encountering like a complex calculation or an analytical problem, and we need to think something through, that's when system two is going to kick in. And again, you can feel when it kicks in. Okay? First time you learn how to drive, that was system two. Hands at 10 and 2, you're checking mirrors, you're thinking about the pedal, you're even thinking about how to put your seatbelt on. You're nervous at intersections. Now, 10, maybe, oh, you guys might not be 10 years in. I'm not gonna out myself. I'm decades in. Um, it becomes automatic. Some other things that are automatic, carrying on a conversation, listening to music. Another thing, again, might be controlled for a while is learning how to read when you're in kindergarten or before that. Then, as time goes on, it becomes automatic. You don't necessarily have to consciously sound out words anymore. All right, athletes, basketball player. When you were learning how to dribble, you had to think about it very consciously. Now, though, you don't even have to think about it. You just do it. You're not looking at it. You're thinking about a lot of other things that are happening on the court. Okay. So, both systems are necessary. Automatic thinking saves a lot of effort, and it does help to explain why we can function really well in complex environments without consciously analyzing every decision. Okay, so if our brains rely on this automatic thinking, okay, where does it come from? Okay. Okay. And we just kind of went over why it exists. This is just a little bit more as well in that we have to make about 35,000 decisions every day, 2,000 decisions per hour. So about one decision every 2 seconds. And that assumes we sleep 7 hours per day, which most of us don't do. And to that end, do we even like to really think or make those decisions? And psychologists and economists have indicated that we really are cognitive misers. And what that means is we're really stingy about how we spend our mental resources. And so we're pretty lazy about it. And so we rely on heuristics, mental shortcuts. But we're bombarded by so much information, it's really hard to process everything. So, in regard to this, if we had to consciously process all of these different decisions, our brain would basically crash. So, as a result of that, we're rational human beings. Our decisions are going to be guided by shortcuts and heuristics. And again, that's kind of where we're going to get into trouble, but we're going to talk about again where does this come from? How is this structured? So we need to talk about schemas first and foremost. These are going to help us interpret new information quickly. And again, it's going to enhance efficiency. So, example, all right? I'm going to ask you a question, okay? Okay, it's a filing system. So when with every one of these concepts, it's going to encompass all of the characteristics associated with it. So, for example, a restaurant. Okay, imagine I say like you walk into a restaurant. Okay, what do you expect? All right. Some of you might be like, okay, there's a host. Somebody's going to seat you. There's going to be a menu. There's going to be a waiter or waitress. Probably food, a bill. You're going to tip the person. Those are probably all parts of your restaurant schema. And if we were in a classroom, I probably didn't need to tell you those things. The schema that you've built over time because you've went to a restaurant so many times over and over and over, this is the schema that has been built for that which your brain conceptualizes as a restaurant. So when I say, tell me what a restaurant is like, these are the things that immediately come to mind. Okay. Another schema, college classroom. First day of class. You've never been in this classroom, but here's the thing, you've been in enough classrooms, you know where to sit. And most of you are probably going to sit in the back of the room, let's be honest. All right. You probably know where the instructor is going to be. You're going to know that you sit in the chair in a specific way and you face forward. You're going to know that you're going to probably bring a notebook and a pen or pencil or a laptop. You're going to know that you're probably going to need to raise your hand and ask questions. You're going to know that you don't interrupt. Again, you don't have to experience that on the first day of a college class. You've experienced it to know it. You've experienced it so many times throughout your life that that is the schema that has been built. And so you just automatically assume that that is what is going to happen. You have a schema for a wedding. All right, so what happens at a wedding? Again, you're filling this in as we go, but there's probably going to be a ceremony. There's going to be some vows. Okay, afterwards, there's going to be a reception. There's going to be a dance. There's going to be a cake. Maybe there's alcohol. Okay, there's a DJ. But then, okay, here we go. Here's where we throw the wrench in. What if halfway through the ceremony, somebody pulls up and starts selling tacos? Okay, yes, I would laugh. I would laugh. That would be hilarious. And because it's a schema violation, you are not expecting that. That is not part of what your brain is expecting to happen. That's when you really take notice. That's when we actually do kind of become conscious and start to pay attention, is because it invalidates what we expect to happen. So again, and in general, that's not going to happen most times. Nobody's going to pull up with a taco truck in the middle of the ceremony, but it would definitely catch your attention because it's not what is expected. So schemas, again, they allow us to navigate the world efficiently. We have expectations about people, places, and situations that make it very efficient and easy to navigate the world. They're going to fill in missing information or information that isn't quite there yet and understand situations quickly. But here's the thing, again, they can lead us to make assumptions that aren't necessarily true. Again, even with that wedding schema, that wasn't, we were expecting one thing, something else happened. So those expectations are not always going to be accurate. Okay. So, we need to talk about automaticity. And so we've kind of talked about it to a certain degree, but in general, with this, okay, so this is perceptual automaticity or visual automaticity. When you see this square, you saw it and you knew it was red. You knew it was a red square. It just happened. You didn't think about it. Your brain just knew it. You didn't have to analyze the sides. You didn't have to analyze the hue. Your brain automatically said red square without any analysis. Okay, that is a perceptual automaticity. Let's continue. There will be more. We also have semantic automaticity. So, I know these are supposed to come up one at a time. Forgive me. When I say Romeo, what's the first word that comes to mind? Peanut butter. Birthday. And again, without thinking. Without thinking, in most cases, when I said Romeo, Juliet came up. Peanut butter, usually jelly, but I get like bananas or pickles or something like that once in a while from people. But it's jelly, okay, people? It's jelly. Birthday, usually birthday cake. Sometimes I get card. But it's the first thing that comes into your mind. That is automaticity. The first thing that came into your mind is a representation of automaticity. And again, for the most part, everybody thought the same words. And again, some of these things, like Romeo and peanut butter specifically, birthday maybe not so much, are easier for our brains to access because they're so strongly connected in memory. That means that they are highly accessible. Even like with Romeo, boom, Juliet. That is something that is highly accessible because they are so connected. There is not much of a connection. Again, I have a friend whose dog's name is Romeo, but I don't think about the dog first. I have much more of a connection when I see Romeo. I think of all of the Shakespeare I've had to read, and I've read Romeo and Juliet multiple times. God help us all. And so my brain immediately goes to Juliet, peanut butter and jelly. That's all I ate growing up. So it goes peanut butter and jelly. And because of those connections that have been made over and over, there's that basically schema in my mind. Those two things go together. And so when one comes up, it basically pulls the other. It activates the other. It makes the other very accessible. Okay, just a couple of examples. Okay, somebody says Disney. Okay, maybe some people think Disney World, Disneyland, maybe Mickey Mouse, vacation. Those are pretty standard. Maybe sports. You think about like a quarterback. All right, maybe you think football, touchdown, NFL, NCAA. You think about something like, oh man, let me think. Like a dentist. Okay, and first thing is like terrifying, but teeth, cleaning, scraping, cavities, drills. Again, so these are all schemas. These are all schemas that we've built in regard to characteristics associated with a concept that are reinforced over time based upon our experiences in the world. And how strong these connections become are based upon how many times we reiterate these experiences. And so these schemas, like peanut butter and jelly, Romeo and Juliet, they organize information, and then the accessibility and how strongly they are connected determines which part of those schemas come to mind first. So this, and we talked a little bit about spreading activation in intro, just a little bit. And this is basically associative networks. This is when our minds are organized in webs of associations formed throughout our lives, and they're learned through experience, culture, and repetition. So some associations, again, Romeo, Juliet. And I don't, these are old ones, so forgive me. Men bad at English, women bad at math. Those are very old stereotypes. Again, like peanut butter and jelly is a good common association. And so here's what happens. Okay, these associations are created. And then we have priming, which is going to come up in a few minutes as well, is that when one concept is activated, like Romeo, the associated concept that has been connected, which is Juliet, it becomes more easily accessible in your mind. And it happens automatically. Not only does it happen automatically, but it's going to shape your judgments, behavior, and perceptions, again, without your awareness. And this does matter, and we'll talk more about priming because it can influence how we interpret information and behave in social situations. And these links and associations form the foundation for implicit biases and automatic thoughts. Okay, and I'm going to mention okay, a couple of unfortunate ones, which I'll talk about here in a couple of minutes. But again, if you are taught that again, these are stereotypes and they're only stereotypes. That does not mean that they are truth. There is a stereotype that Asians are good at math. So if you hear that over and over and over, Asians good at math, okay? What could happen, okay, if you are a teacher in a classroom, you're a math teacher in a classroom and you have somebody that is Asian, Again, you associate them with being good at math. You may actually treat them differently in that math classroom than you would otherwise without that stereotype. Same thing. If you associate a specific group of people with a negative stereotype, and again, you see somebody from that group, automatically, again, that is going to activate that negative stereotype. And thus, as a result of that, it could result in negative treatment, unfortunately. Okay, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. Okay, then we have chronic accessibility. Okay, so accessibility is like how easily is it to grasp onto that concept? Again, how easy is it to grasp onto Juliet when I say Romeo? And so some concepts are always going to be close to conscious awareness. They've been used so often the mind keeps them easily retrievable. And again, they do shape how we see the world, even if we're not aware of it. And it matters. Okay, frequently used concepts like your name, what you value, whether that is religiously, ethically, morally, what role you have, if you're an athlete, if you're a teacher, if you're a student, that those are all highly accessible. And not only that, they shape how we see the world and how we see reality and how we interpret ambiguous situations, other people, or ourselves. We see it through these filters. And because all these schemas are going to be different, we see the world differently. Okay, here's an example as a cocktail party effect. So you're at a noisy party and somebody says your name across the room. Again, it's really noisy. You shouldn't, lots of music, people are screaming, yelling, whatever, but you hear it. I'm sure this has happened to you. You look up because you heard your name in a crowded room. Your name is so chronically accessible, it cuts all through the noise. But somebody else might have been, there could have been all sorts of other names tossed around throughout the night. You didn't pick up on them at all. But because your name is just right under that surface, right under that surface, that as soon as it is said, boom, your attention is right on it. It's always near the surface. Okay, I'm going to stop right there because I've went a little too long on this one, and then we'll come back and we'll do a priming demonstration.